365 Sports rode along with our great friend. There he is, Sam Kahn, and his throne, theathletic.com college football columnist. That chair, the way you're sitting in that chair behind you, makes you look like you got like those big, broad shoulder muscles. Like you have been pounding the weights, and maybe you do. Sam, thanks for your time. Man, what a couple of days with Belichick, and we'll start with Rich Rod at West Virginia. Belichick's a huge story, but Rich Rod going back to West Virginia where he had success, left in the middle of the night. They need somebody to give them a spark. Your thoughts about it?
It's fascinating to me because if you'd have told a West Virginia fan in 2007, after the way that thing ended, that he'd be back as a head coach, I bet you nobody would have believed you. It's interesting to see how this developed. I started hearing this a couple weeks back, actually right before the final week of the season, that there was some push and some buzz in West Virginia for this move, particularly with the boosters, who were, I think, really wanting to inject some juice and some energy into this program. And one thing about Rich Rodriguez is if you look back at his track record, I don't think there's really much of a question about his coaching acumen. He did have a little bit of a rough stint in Michigan, but beyond that, he's been pretty successful at every other program he's been. And obviously what he's done at Jacksonville State, getting that program into the transition to the FBS, they've done really well since he's been there. And I think he's still got it. And the thing for West Virginia is I think the level of excitement that this brings after what's happened the last couple of years. Obviously, they had the really good season on the hot seat year for Brown, but this year, obviously, it ended really badly in that Texas Tech game. And I think they just felt like it was time to move on, and this brings them back to a level of excitement that I think they really need.
Sam, who do you think is set up to be more successful quicker, Scott Frost or Rich Rodriguez?
Probably Rich Rodriguez, just because he's been in the college game more recently. I know Scott kind of took a year where he wasn't doing as much, and Rich has been running a program. The Scott Frost hire was really interesting to me. I would say I was a little bit puzzled by it, just because I understand the success that he had there the first time and how great they were. But that was a long time ago. That was before the transfer portal existed. That was before NIL, before the one-time transfer rule. And I know that a lot of the factors in Nebraska and his failure are unrelated to what helped him be successful at UCF. I think there was a lot of pressure on him, on the prodigal son coming home and wanting to succeed at your alma mater. That's an unspoken pressure that I think is very difficult to deal with, that he doesn't have to deal with at UCF. But the game has changed a lot since he was last in Orlando. So I am more wait and see on Scott Frost. If he gets it going again and they start rolling, then, you know, that good for them and I'll be impressed. But if I was betting on which one I think is going to get better results sooner, I think it's going to be Rich Rod in West Virginia.
There is still the Sam Houston job open right now, Sam, and I just thought it was an interesting cast of guys that appear to be finalists for that job. Sean Bell, Matt Powledge, Phil Longo, Tim Dowse, Rashad Samples, Curtis Looper. You have any sort of a feel one way or the other, or any feeling like one of those guys might be the best bet here? It seems like a really interesting, diverse mix of guys there for the Bearcats.
Yeah, it really is. And I think it's a really good list for that job, which, by the way, is one of the hardest jobs in the FBS. They have as few resources as anybody financially, from coaching staff, head coaching salary, coaching staff pool, NIL. I don't want to say it's non-existent, but it's very, very minimal. So this is a very difficult job. So to have that list of what I think is a lot of quality coaches is really impressive for Bobby Williams and Sam Houston. The names I had heard the most in these circles have been Powledge, Doust, Bell, and Longo. Those have been the ones that have trended the most. The Samples one is interesting. I'd heard that one early on. I wasn't sure how deeply they would look into that, but obviously he's a finalist. So, and I think he's a really bright guy, really young, obviously, and it would be a first-time head coaching gig for him. Honestly, it'd be a first-time head coaching gig for a lot of these guys. But That's an intriguing one to me. That would definitely be different from what I expected them. It sounded to me when Bobby Williams opened this job that he wanted somebody or preferred somebody that was familiar with Sam Houston. And that's where Powledge comes in because of his background in Huntsville, his time there, being a player there, Longo's coach there, Dowse's coach there. So the guys with those ties to university, I think there is a little bit of an internal preference for that because I think Bobby Williams feels like it's a place you got to understand really especially when you're given the resource challenges, but it's going to be interesting to see how this unfolds. I don't think they can really go wrong with any of these choices.
You know, what's amazing about Sam Houston State. I'm an SFA guy. We hated each other back, the big rivalry, and it really was very intense. They had fights after games and stuff, crazy stuff. Like we've never seen that before. But how much they have separated from who they were or what most everyone remains. Tarleton State's doing that too, and maybe because you can do that in the state of Texas with the talent, but man, they're all in. They've moved up, and they can't afford to miss on this one with Casey leaving, who had done such a great job.
Yeah, that's the thing that I think Casey Keeler's job and what he did was really undersold and underrated nationally, just because obviously this is a program that's new to the FBS, and so people don't really pay attention to it nationally. But when you look at, okay, he won at the FCS level, won the national championship, and yes, they had success before him with Willie Fritz. That's a program that's been successful for more than a decade. But the transition to FBS is not easy. Not everyone is James Madison and had the kind of success they had right away. You guys remember last year, they went 0-8, and they won some real gut-wrenching losses. There was some real difficult defeats that they took, and he did a great job of taking a really holistic view of the program, making some improvements, holding on to as many guys as he could despite minimal resources, and really flipping that thing in a short amount of time. And doing that transition after playing for a national championship, and then all of a sudden you have a year where you're not playing for anything before the transition, and you're trying to redshirt guys, and you're trying to keep guys there, and all of these different challenges with, again, minimal resources. I think Keeler did a fantastic job. I think Temple hit a home run with hiring him. But when you look at, to your point, Smoke, with where they are, they wanted to make this move. It was difficult. It's challenging. It's not going to be without its bumps in the road. They're on the lower end of the budget in terms of the schools that are their peers in the conference. They're on the lower end of athletic budget. I think they're around like $25 million, trying to get to 30. So it's going to be an uphill battle, but you can bypass some of those growing pains if you nail the right coach, which they have the last two with Fritz and with Keeler. And now they're going to have to hope to do it again.
Sam, Connor Weigman on his way to Houston. It's funny with him. I saw him, a lot of services had him ranked as like the 4th or 5th best quarterback in the portal. I thought that was a little low for a guy who was 4-1 as a starter in the SEC this year, whose only loss was to Notre Dame. And just simply, I think his thing at A&M was, 1, health, and 2, he didn't fit their system anymore. And Marcel Reed has dynamic athleticism that not many human beings have, and they kind of wanted to make a go with him. I think for Willie Fritz in Houston, especially, theoretically still, having some depth there at the position, I think this is a home run and a half.
Yeah, for Houston, absolutely, especially when you talk about how bad they were offensively. They need somebody who can really give them a spark, and they're going to have to outfit him with some better talent around him, especially at receiver. I think it looks like they're holding on to Stephon Johnson, which is huge, but Joseph Manjack, I think, hit the portal, and there's some others. So that's they're going to have to rebuild the receiver room. I see they're attacking the offensive line in the portal too. That's really important. But to your point, I think it was huge for them. And when you think about what they're going to do offensively with Slade Nagel, if it looks like what it did at Tulane in 2023 with Michael Pratt, I think there's real potential here for Houston and for Connor Weigman. I was talking about this with a personnel guy in college, and he said, hey, look, if you look at what they did offensively at Tulane with Michael Pratt, there's nothing that Michael Pratt did that they asked him to do at Tulane that Connor Weigman cannot do. He can do everything that Pratt did. And so if you can plug him into that offense and use him in a similar way, surround him with the weapons, I think there's a chance this thing could really take off. And I agree with you. I don't think Weigman's a bad player. I think the circumstances really got to him this year. I think the injuries have obviously hurt him throughout his career. But when he was healthy those first 2 years, he really looked great. And then even this year, when he got back from the injury, that first game against Mizzou, he looked like the guy that I thought we saw as a freshman and a sophomore. I agree with you that the system I don't think fit him. We talked about that a lot this year. I just don't think Colin Klein's system is a fit for his skills. It fits Reed a lot better, in my opinion. And so getting into a system that I think will fit him better and will be tailored a little bit more to his skills will help him thrive, I think, when he gets to Houston.
Sam, I know this is very general, but there's been so much going on, so I'll leave it open-ended. Has there been any portal move that really particularly stood out to you? Like, oh, that's interesting, or, oh, wow, I can't, like that kind of a moment. Has there been one for you yet in this year's portal cycle?
Yeah, I was really surprised at Malik Murphy hitting the portal out of Duke.
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting that. There was a lot of the names that went in the first day. You always get some surprises. I would say a lot of them, from what I had heard and just calling around and the lead up to this, were expected. But the Murphy one was one when that popped up Monday night. I was like, oh wow, I didn't realize that was that situation. Even though I think a week before we had kind of checked in on that, and it didn't sound like a week before that was heading that way. So I'm really curious to see where he's going to go, what the market for him is like, because I think he's a really talented, physically gifted quarterback. There are still some flaws, and there's still some room to grow for him as a player, but he did really well. They led him to a 9-3 record, threw for, I think, 26 touchdowns, which is a school record for them. So he's a talented player, and we all saw what he did in his limited time at Texas. So he's going to make whoever gets him pretty happy. But I thought Duke made out like a bandit with getting Darian Mensah, because I think Mensah is the best quarterback in this cycle. I have him above Jackson Arnold, above Weigman. I think when you think of how many years of eligibility he has, his physical talent, the potential, his instincts, his accuracy, the whole nine, I think he's going to really thrive. And you pair him with that offense that they use over there. Jonathan Brewer used to be at SMU, the scheme that they kind of run, which is similar to what SMU is doing. I think he can really thrive in that. But Murphy's the one that really surprised me.
Sam, what are your thoughts on the Heisman this weekend? And if you have a vote, I know you can't say it. I can't either. But your thoughts, I mean, you have two guys who are incredibly special in their own way. And it does seem it's hard to separate them, but you have to. And they're a part of the finalists, of course, Dylan Gabriel and also Cam Ward. Should anyone else have been added to that list, although they got to kind of minimize it a little bit? But your thoughts about how you make a decision between those two?
Yeah, it's really difficult. This is a year, in my opinion, where you can say this about both of the top candidates, is that if it were any other year, they would be the runaway winner. I think in any other year without each other in the race, Travis Hunter could be the runaway winner, or Ashton Genty could have been the runaway winner in a different circumstance. But alas, here we are. And so it is really difficult to delineate. I think you're going to have some people who look at Travis Hunter and what he did on both sides of the ball, not just good, he was great. One thing I want to smash is this narrative that he was just a good player on both sides of the ball. That's BS. He was a great player. And anybody, I know you guys did, who watched Big 12 football every week, that guy brought it every single week, except for the times he was injured. And so I was really impressed by what he did. But then you look at Genty, and not only did he consistently run and be productive and get close to, we're talking about an all-time record rushing, but he lifted a team to the playoffs. I mean, this is unprecedented for Boise State. And we know, obviously, they went to the BCS and they did all that back in the day, but this is a new era in college football where you're not necessarily supposed to be able to compete at this level. But Boise State went toe-to-toe with the number one team in the country, and he ran for over 200 yards against them. That's incredible. And so it's really difficult. I think either one of them is deserving. And to your point, should there have been anybody else in the finalist ceremony? Yeah, I would have had Cam Skattebo in the finalist list. And I really wish they would take 5 finalists every year. I don't think we have to limit it to 4. I wish they'd take 5 every year. And if I had a choice for a 5th, I would have had Skattebo on that list. But to me, where Arizona State was at the start of this year and where we thought they were going to be and where they are now, he deserves so much credit for that, because he really is kind of the heart and soul of that team. He's so tough. He's so physical, and he is such a dynamic offensive weapon for them. And I remember, I'm sure you guys remember last year watching, there were some points last year when they were having quarterback situations that he was their offense. It was snap it to Cam Skattebo and just let him go. And he just built on that and just became an elite player, both as a runner and a receiver out of the backfield. Just a tremendous all-around player. But I think it's a good crop that we have of finalists, and I'm excited to see how it plays out.
Sam, thank you very much. We appreciate it. Paul, anything else?
No,
Greg, get up. Thank you, buddy. Great to see you. Good to have you. Are you going to get the playoffs start a week from Friday, a week from tomorrow. So it's a holiday right after that. What are your plans as a guy that has to cover everything and be everywhere? We're going to be in Houston for a day or two with their bowl game against LSU, but just curious about you and a chance to get away and decompress.
I sure hope so. I hope at least to get. I always try to at least to get the 24th, the 25th off. If I get that, then I call it a win. I think we should, but I'll be covering Texas on the 21st, and probably with Texas throughout the balance. However long they go in the postseason is how long I'll follow them. So, and then of course in the rest of this month I'm covering the transfer portal. So that's kept me busy enough in this last week. So I've got plenty to keep me busy until then, but I hope to unplug my phone for at least a couple of days around Christmas.
Shame on you. No, I appreciate it, Sam. Always great to have you on. Love it. TheAthletic.com covers college football like a blanket.